Medical professionals of Reddit, what was a time where a patient ignored you and almost died because of it? I am a nurse and I had a very polite and lovely patient trying to remove all manner of chest tubes and IVs after a motorcycle accident. He was obviously delirious from the pain meds and the head injury, but very nice still. I left him in the care of my co-worker for my lunch. 10 minutes into my lunch break I see him stagger past the break room door like something out of The Walking Dead, trailing blood everywhere, only to collapse out cold a couple of seconds later. Said he needed the bathroom. IDK how the frick he pulled his own chest tubes out. Removing them always makes me cringe, let alone doing it to himself. He was put back to bed, this time in the ICU, and got some more sedation, and even though him ripping it all out set him back a couple of weeks, he still discharged and came to say hi and thanks on the way out. The happiest delirious patient I ever had. What a bloody trooper. Haha. Had a post-cardiac surgery patient get out of bed, naked, and walk up to the front desk demanding to talk to the charge. Don't remember why. He unhooked his chest tubes from the suction. Surprisingly there was no bloody mess because he actually clamped them off. When asked about it later he said, well, I thought about pulling them out but it seemed like a bad idea. Had a throat cancer patient. We offered him surgery to remove the tumor. It was a fairly conservative surgery. He left because he didn't want a mutilating surgery and his daughter-in-law had been studying magnet therapy and she was quite good with it. His words. He came back a year later and was out of reach from any treatment. His cancer was so advanced that there was nothing we could do for him. Patient came in with syncope and general malaise. Found out she had a tiny patch of skin cancer on her ear, which she hadn't treated in over a year because she wanted to go to a different hospital to have it removed and just hadn't found the time. It metastasized to her brain, and I think other places. They gave her 5 months maximum. We had a college student come into the year and had a wonderful case of appendicitis. He needed to get surgery ASAP as surgery is way easier and safer if done before it ruptures. He called his parents to let them know and they told him to refuse because he had a test upcoming in the week and they didn't want him to miss it. He left the year against medical advice while we were all telling him that if your appendicitis gets worse and ruptures it can definitely lead to death. The kid luckily comes back about 10 hours later after it ruptured. He gets the emergency surgery and the amount of time he got to spend in the hospital probably doubled. Holy, those parents are beyond stupid. Had a repeat patient, not quite frequent flyer status. As a medic that would always call for a severe allergic reaction to shellfish every other month or so. She had always had the allergy and knew her reactions were getting worse. After a year, 6 or 7 calls of the silliness, my crew and I stayed in the hospital with her and talked at length about the situation since she'd always stay mum about how it kept happening. She told us she comes from a patriarchal culture and her father made this amazing seafood soup. If she didn't eat it and force her body not to reject his gift to the family, she would lose her car, phone, or whatever punishment her father deemed necessary. We pleaded with her to do whatever it took to show him it was deadly and carry her EpiPens with her. Fast forward a few years when I altered course into nursing and joined that saw a familiar bloated face. Turns out she had gone off to college in another state and hadn't been home for a while, but had visited her folks for a holiday. Of course she had the soup and despite hitting herself with the EpiPen when her throat started tightening, the reaction continued. Her mom, who I had never seen before, told me she tried to eat it fast and rushed to the bathroom where she was found on the floor. The medics couldn't tube her in the field so tried medical management until they could drive her to our doc performed a tracheotomy at the bedside and she went to the ICU. Took a week for her to recover and I was told by the ICU nurses that her father finally got it, that her allergy was a real medical condition. Whoa, poor woman. Hopefully the father actually did get it because that is balls. Shellfish allergies are severe. We had a mom in the NICU who would constantly kiss her premature baby on the mouth. Several nurses educated her around why that's not safe for the baby, and thankfully documented their teachings. This was during cold and flu season, and became even more concerning when the mother was coming in with cold-like symptoms, coughing, sneezing and obvious congestion. She still continued to kiss the baby right on the mouth. The baby was almost ready to go home by this time, but got extremely sick. The baby ended up on a ventilator and had quite the extended stay with many close calls. Animal hospital professional. At least once a week we have to resuture up a spay because the owners don't want to keep the cone on their dog cat and let them tear up their surgical site. Their organs are right there. Keep the dang cone on. I don't care how sad Luna is with it on. Then they yell at me because it costs money to sedate and resuture an animal. Pet owners are some of the worst in that way. Good owners are great, but those ones that buy an animal for the aesthetic are terrible. I've read that the most common reason for a surgery to be re-performed is the patient not following doctor's orders during recovery. Doctor says, don't ride your bicycle for 6 weeks. Patient hears, don't ride your bicycle until you feel you can. Patient came to see me having a stroke due to a blocked brain artery. I'd activated the code stroke team. Everyone was ready in the theater to get the clot out of her artery. Nurses, anesthetist, technician. But she, 42, insisted on updating her Facebook status and checking in before allowing me to treat her. Wasted 5 minutes and 10 million brain cells, if she had that many to start with. Winner of the WTF award from me. Didn't die, but did lose an eye as a result. Young kid, 20, with bad diabetic retinopathy from uncontrolled DM type 1. Had eye surgery to remove blood and scar tissue from inside the eye. We told him to take it easy for a few weeks. He went to Six Flags. Roller coasters are bad. Retina completely detached. Eye got soft and painful. Had to be removed. Eye got soft. No. Please don't get up on your own. Then he gets up on own and pulls out line going into jugular that leads directly to the heart and proceeds to bleed all over everything until he pass out and almost dies. Again. No. No. One time at the VA after adult circumcision. Do not have sex or masturbate for 6 weeks. Decided to masturbate the next day. All stitches tore. When I was in medical school, had a gentleman in his late 60s come in for chest pain. Found to have a large heart attack. Very impressive STEMI and lad by EKG. Refused emergent cardiac catheterization, go through the arteries and put a stent to open up the vessel of the heart, so he could bring his car home and planned on taking an ambulance back to the hospital. He was in the parking ramp and it cost $20 day to park. Came back by ambulance in full arrest, no pulse, and died. Doc had to call his son and explain what happened. He was like, yeah, that sounds like dad. He's always been cheap. Obviously what happened wasn't worth saving the $20, but that seems like really expensive parking. Friend told me a slightly overweight homeless woman was shooting in her butt and the spot was necrotic. She came in with sepsis and somehow standing and talking with what he could only describe to me as near full body organ failure. They stabilize her. Somehow she survives but is now missing half an butt. He said 2 years later she came back with her foot now rotting off from shooting in between her toes and on her ankle. Same condition, etc. Just now the leg. They amputate and he says somehow she survives again. Except 2 weeks later she is pushed back in on a wheelchair, drooling and nearly dead from overdose. Put an IQ. Son comes to visit her. At this point the hospital staff and my friend know her by name by the multiple visits. She hasn't seen her son in nearly a decade. He convinces her to promise to try to clean up for her grandchildren. Less than 24 hours later she ODs. Again, inside the hospital bathroom, somehow having snuck her kitten, nobody knows how. Friend said she was on the toilet with the needle in her arm, still warm, but very dead. Snuck her kitten, nobody knows how, probably in that hollow spot where her butt used to be. That's what I'd do. Not necessarily the patient, but the caretakers at the facility where the patient was living. I used to visit different board and lodge facilities for adults with mental illnesses and meet with clients to discuss their mental health, help them set up job interviews, therapy sessions, and help them set up their medications for the week if they were unable to do it themselves. Most of these facilities were places for people who had left the hospital and were deemed independent and stable enough to have the freedom to come and go as they pleased in a shared living situation, much like a dorm. Despite having a place to stay and food provided, they were usually pretty poorly supervised by the mental health staff workers there. I often hated these places because, while they were ideal for some people who were truly getting back on their feet and thrived off being able to live a semi-normal independent life, they were way too lax for many of the sicker, more isolating patients who were not at all well and slipping under the radar. Some of this included them not taking their medication as directed, which was one of the requirements for keeping their housing, but unfortunately it was not strictly enforced. There was one man who had paranoid schizophrenia who was extremely quiet and kept to himself. I had met with him a few times and he seemed to be going downhill in his appearance and general mood. I spoke with his doctor and urged the facility staff to closely monitor him and his medication intake, as I saw in his logs that he often skipped coming in to get his medication at all. I was told that they were going to be sitting down with him to remind him of his living agreement and that he had 30 days before losing his housing if he wasn't med compliant. I was also told that his psychiatrist was aware and they may be sending him back to the hospital that week. Apparently this never happened and he went out into the community and acquired a knife and used it to slice up his roommate while his roommate slept. He carved him from mouth to ear and stabbed him in the stomach several times. The man survived the attack, but the man who had gone off his medication claimed he was being poisoned by his roommate through the window AC unit. For anyone with a violent incident like that on their medical report, it is incredibly unlikely he will ever be able to find a better rehabilitation house ever again that will accept him. The system basically screwed over 2 people that day, as the man who was hurt was already there for PTSD, and as you can imagine, it not only scarred him physically for life but exacerbated his illness with more trauma. That is terrible. Negligence created 2 victims and made them worse off. That is one of the worst stories on here. Doctor here. I had a patient who came in and on evaluation I determined that her diabetes was out of control by the look of her retinas, which required immediate intervention. I sent her straight to the retina specialist who then scheduled her for an OR. She decided that day not to go in because she had work and couldn't afford to take off. She was cleaning houses and the sprays made her sneeze, causing massive hemorrhaging in her eyes due to the weakened vascular state from the diabetes. She went immediately blind and got into emergency surgery that day. It took months of recovery and injections to reverse some damage, and she now years later has functional vision again. Her kidneys were also failing her and she had no idea. This kicked off a massive lifestyle change and a chain of doctor's appointments that saved her life, all starting from an eye exam. Patient was supposed to have starved for 8 hours for her morning scheduled breast surgery. During the procedure she regurgitated what can only be described as a full partially digested English breakfast, with identifiable sausages, egg, beans and possibly black pudding, up into her unprotected airway and attempted to inhale the lot. Managed to prevent the majority of it going down, but she needed HDU care for a day or so for her lungs to recover from the stomach acid. I used to work for a surgery center and the amount of morons who did this was astounding. There's a freaking reason you are told not to eat drink 8 hours prior to surgery. They have no idea about aspiration. When I'm told the 8-hour rule I fast for over 12 hours. I dang well make sure there is nothing in my system to frick me up. EMT paramedic student here. So we had a patient who was morbidly obese and couldn't get out of his house. He decides after about 4 days of uncontrolled chest pain to call it in. Well, we get there and find evidence of several MIs but refuses care and wants us to leave. About 45 minutes later we get a call from the building he lived in and we got there and it was him in full-blown cardiac arrest. This man was so obese that we couldn't get him through the door and had to knock out a wall and lift him down off the 2nd story with a lift. All the while me and my paramedic lead were bagging him through an ET tube. Lots of firsts on that call. First ET tube I put in and first IO is ever seen done in the field. Butthole patient on a Centrimag. Basically a heart pump with hoses that draw blood from your heart into a pump next to the bed and brings the blood back to the heart through a different hose. As you could imagine, there is little room for movement since they could dislodge and you'd have blood squirting inside your body or outside. This guy was adamant he had to sleep face down. Well, he did, and then he died. I would want the completely strapped down and anchored to the floor option. I'm on dialysis and one of the nurses told me about patients that after kidney transplants just will stop taking their anti-rejection meds after a few years because they think they don't need it anymore, and it's really frustrating for them nurses because the patients just ruined a donor kidney. My mother-in-law has been on dialysis for a while now, awaiting her new kidney. Problem with this is that she smoked about 9-10 cigarettes a day. Now she is only down to 4 cigarettes, 2 joints of weed and her vape. She is never getting her donor kidney and she will probably be dead in the next year. Only thing is that she makes all her dialysis appointments and takes all her meds religiously. I had the snip and my doctor told me to take a week off, wear tight-fitting underpants and not lift anything heavier than a cup of tea. I did exactly that and had no problems. My best mate thought that was all nonsense and went back to fitting kitchens the day after his vasectomy, and the day after that he was in hospital with a testicle the size of a coconut. Not a doctor, have worked in addictions field. Too many clients have died or will die because despite the repeated warnings from their doctor that they have almost no liver function or that what they're drinking is giving them all sorts of brain damage, they continue to drink hard. But a lot of these guys feel like they have nothing to live for but the bottle. It's really heartbreaking. This would be my father-in-law. At this point the alcohol is just slow working poison that is eating away at his body. Not a professional but a patient who got scared by their doctor. I had my second C-section. My surgeon had to leave before I could be discharged, so the other surgeon have me my discharge orders. He'd just come back from having to resew a woman's abdomen back together because she decided to stand up and pick up a 5-year-old the day she left the hospital. Well, he let me know under no uncertain terms that I had better not pick up anything over 8 pounds or stand up while holding anything or we'd have words. Man, he was scary, but he'd also had to push this woman's guts back in and see her terrified child covered in his mom's blood. So anyway, I did not pick up anything heavier than my child for 2 weeks until they said I could. He also told me husband all about not having sex and he shouldn't even talk to me about it for 3 months. Sounds like a competent doctor. I'd follow that advice. Patient had vague abdominal symptoms, and I recommended a CT scan. He refused cause he was afraid of radiation. He also refused colonoscopy, so all we could do was an ultrasound, which found nothing cause he was fat, and abdominal ultrasound is a crappy examination anyway. A year later he was admitted again, and this time he couldn't refuse a CT, where we found a massive colon cancer. He's probably dead now. My ex's dad refused to go to the doctor when he hadn't taken a crap for over 2 freaking weeks. When he eventually went, they, shockingly, found a big old tumor obstructing his bowl. It turned out to be benign, but there was so much crap backed up in there the doctors said it was basically a miracle his colon didn't rupture and kill him with septic shock. Had a patient signed out by another doc at shift change pending chest x-ray. CXR showed aortic dissection. This guy should have been dead already. Being a small hospital, level 3 trauma center, in the middle of nowhere, we call the closest level 1 for a transfer. Ambulance shows up for transfer and the guy decides he's not going. He's got enemies in that city and they'll kill him. After a standoff in the hallway involving security, police, EMTs, multiple docs, nurses, and a very scared scribe, me, the guy, a very large man, gets on board with the plan and decides not to leave AMA. Later, we find out from EMTs he tried to jump out of the ambulance en route to the other hospital. Once he arrived, he left AMA. No clue what happened to him after, but dang, the dissection was insane. Sounds like you were the side character to someone's movie character. I wasn't there that day, but we had a patient who had been non-compliant with his leg pumps, these inflatable velcro things that force blood to continue circulating so that clots don't form in the legs. He didn't want to wear them, and he had the right to refuse, so we couldn't force him. Lo and behold, when therapy finally got him up to walk the halls, he immediately keeled over from a massive heart attack. They coded him right there on the floor, and got him back, but he passed later that night. I just can't comprehend this one. Those leg compressors are uncomfortable. I actually think they feel kinda like a leg massage. What an idiot. My dad tells a story of a morbidly obese woman who came into his clinic and after an exam told her simply, if you don't make drastic changes to your lifestyle and diet and start losing weight, you are going to die. She was dead within the week. Her family tried to sue because my dad was clearly a witch doctor and cursed her to death. It was sad all around. This is an interesting cultural thing that we talked about when I was in nursing school. Some cultures like traditional Native Americans or Haitian cultures believe that if you tell them that they could die from their disease, then that's basically like you're wishing death upon that person. That sucks that your dad was accused of that. Once I was the only doctor on duty in a rural village with diminished medical supplies. The village is called Sniffing and lies in the desert southern Iraq. A 4-year-old child came to what was supposed to be a with diarrhea and some dehydration. They didn't have tap water and they drink from a nearby river. Directly, that is. From what I gathered, it seemed that the child had cholera. Cholera has some unique reputation in medicine that I will skip here for the sake of your appetite. I strongly urged his father to keep him longer for observation, but he refused. A few hours later he came back and the child was very ill and severely dehydrated. He was, as we describe such case, medically drowsy. He looked like a rotten wooden doll with the sunken eyes of an old man. I couldn't get an IV access, an accessible vein for fluids, and didn't have a central line set. I had to cannulate one of the large veins of his neck and he barely made it. Cholera wasn't endemic, not usually seen there, so I had to make some calls and provide some samples to be tested about 200 miles away and send the child with an ambulance after he was stable. The father and his son came back a couple of weeks later to visit. I gave him some chlorine tablets and cookies for the kids. Awesome job, man. I was assistant manager of a group home. We had a resident who had epilepsy and was also very reclusive. He would get agitated if we came in his room or even knocked on the door. However, policy said he had to be checked on every 30 minutes because of his seizure risk. That wasn't being done, so I brought this up to the manager. She said she was aware, but it was okay to bend the rules because he would get really upset when we checked in on him. I really wasn't comfortable with her answer, but I was young and assumed she knew better than me. When I was on duty I checked on him every 30 minutes and he would yell at me, but I didn't let it bother me. About 6 months later, after I had been reassigned to another group home, he had a seizure alone in his room and was found dead. A day later. Now I'm older and a little smarter. When I find a problem like this I stick with it. I don't let people talk me out of it. Not again. Rest in peace. D. Gone but not forgotten. OMG. I'm currently a pediatric neuro nurse, so 75% of my patients are kids with epilepsy. I wish more people would take seizures more seriously. I'm constantly trying to educate parents about the risks and so many of them are so nonchalant about the condition. I was working on a general med-surg unit as a new nurse. An elderly diabetic patient ran over her second toe with the bedside table and the nail was ripped off. She was incredibly mean and didn't want anyone touching her or talking to her. I tried to explain the severity of her injury, especially because she was an uncontrolled diabetic and already had compromised circulation to her feet. She still refused to let me treat the wound. She also refused care from the physician. There was really nothing we could do more than a gentle cleansing with antibiotic ointment and sterile dressings, which she eventually relented to. She was refusing everything and not demented or disoriented, so we had to respect her wishes. She had overall poor hygiene and days later still refused more than just the bare minimum care. She came back to the hospital about 2 months later with an amputated leg. That toe was gangrenous and everything below the knee had to go. The doc told her she likely would have been fine if she didn't refuse treatment. After her amputation she again tried to refuse care. We did what we had to do and eventually she was discharged back to the nursing home she came from. She sabotaged her own healing several times by introducing infection to her wounds because of neglect and carelessness. I saw her obituary in the newspaper a few weeks later. Sounds like she was actively trying to die, but still in a passive way. Like a suicide, you can claim to not be suicide. Nurse paramedic here. Frequently went to a patient's home for a shortness of breath call. She was always smoking while receiving supplemental oxygen, which is quite dangerous. I told her to stop doing it. A few weeks later, she burned her house down and nearly died of third-degree facial burns after continuing to smoke while on oxygen. Had a patient who was NPO, not allowed to eat, because he had a bowel obstruction. He didn't like that we weren't feeding him, so, unbeknownst to the nurses, he called up Papa John's and ordered some garlic knots. He ate the entire box. Then, predictably, he vomited them up, aspirated his vomit, went into respiratory arrest, and coded. We did CPR and got him back. He had some underlying lung issues, so we never could get him weaned off the ventilator. He spent a month in the ICU and was eventually discharged to a long-term care facility with a tracheostomy on the vent. I'm not a medical professional, but I used to get allergy injections to build up my immune system because of the crazy amount of allergies I had. I would get these injections every week and I was instructed by my family doctor and the allergist to wait in the waiting room 30 minutes after the injection in case I received a reaction. Well, one day I decided I didn't want to wait anymore, also because it had been a few months without a reaction, and left immediately after my appointment. I went into anaphylactic shock not even 10 minutes later. It was crazy because I didn't even know what was happening at first and didn't even know how to use an EpiPen. My wife is a labor and delivery nurse. When a baby is born they give it some vitamin that the baby can't produce itself for the first 6 months of its life, or something like that. I think it's vitamin K to help with blood clotting. It's potentially lethal if the baby doesn't get this obviously as they can bleed out internally. Welp. One mother didn't want their kid getting vitamin K cause anti-vaxxer. Baby ended up dying in the NICU. No way to know if the lack of vitamin K contributed to the death or not, but I think most medical professionals would point to it being part of the reason the baby died. It is vitamin K which is produced by gut bacteria. Babies have sterile guts until they start nursing feeding. What's the most fricked up relationship advice post you've seen on Reddit? One guy asked if he was the butthole for not bothering to help his wife when she fainted. He found her unconscious on the floor, but left her alone because she seemed fine. One that is fricked up in a light-hearted way. I think it was on Artifu. A guy was convinced that his wife was cheating on him because she would go out randomly late at night. So one night he followed her and confronted her in the parking lot of the Waffle House that she had gone to. It turned out that she had a phobia of pooping when he might hear it, and for the duration of their marriage had been leaving the house to poop out of fear of him hearing her. That's hilarious and sad. It's just body functions. I thought the story was going to end she was going out to have secret snacks at Waffle House. I haven't been able to find it again, but I'm haunted by this relationship post by a woman who pranked her husband. He was a vet with severe PTSD, and she thought it would be a good idea to dress up in all black with a ski mask and hide in their shower. She jumped out at him, and he ended up beating her into hospitalization as he screamed wife's name. Run. There's someone in the house. She wanted to know how she could save a relationship where her traumatized husband now had to live with the fact he hospitalized his wife. The wife was afraid of her husband, and the wife's family thought the husband was a pose. Poor dude. Really poor. No one will believe him. He is scared for life, and he just wanted to save his and her life. Fricked up. Teen's mom confessed on her deathbed that they were illegitimate. Teen was torn about what to do and went to Reddit to ask whether they should tell their dad the truth. They were encouraged to come clean. They did. Dad got pee and kicked Teen out of the house. Last update was not good. Teen was considering suicide. That's awful. Probably the post from the girl that was complaining about her boyfriend's crappy underwear due to him not wiping properly because putting anything in his butt would make him gay. That one poor girl who was being emotionally manipulated by her boyfriend husband who kept saying she stunk. Every day he would say she stinks. She was going mental, taking multiple showers a day and wearing deodorant and perfumes and even seeing her doctor because she thought she may have a medical condition if she stunk so much. After years I think of this going on and driving her insane, she snapped at him asking him why he would stay with her if she stunk so much, and she broke down about it. He apologized and came out saying his dad told him the best way to make a woman stay with you is to tell her she stinks all the time so that she wouldn't be confident in being with any other guy or some crap. Saddest thing I've ever read. I hope she broke up with him. If I remember correctly, she did in an update. The girl whose BF was secretly feeding her slugs and it was making her ill. One of the most fricked up things I've ever read. Yeah, that's the most fricked up thing I've ever read on Reddit. Eating a slug isn't just gross or unhygienic. It can literally kill you or leave you permanently paralyzed. Putting them in someone's food is nothing short of attempted murder. The post where a father discovered through one of his daughter's DNA ancestry test that she wasn't his child. He then did paternity tests for his other 3 daughters excluding the youngest and found out none of them were his either. Where the age range between the oldest and youngest daughter were big since Op had been with his wife since they were in high school. When he approached her about it, she initially brushed him off until him and all of the children confronted her. where she only just cried and apologized but didn't say anything else. She never explained anything to him, and weeks passed by without the couple saying anything to each other. Op came home one day to find his wife had killed herself. He never got any explanation and all 5 daughters lost their mother. That was last update he posted. There was a post on our Amidasol that haunts me to this day. The OP was a pregnant woman whose husband became seemingly obsessed with the idea that she would not survive the birth, when her doctors had indicated nothing but a normal, healthy pregnancy. Husband's father, who had raised husband as a single parent, joined in on the obsession. Husband and Phil started to act like it was a given that OP would die during the birth and began to pressure her into spending all her time preparing for her death. Like forcing her to pack up all her belongings so they wouldn't have to do it after she passed. It continued to escalate to the point where they were basically berating her for being selfish and not thinking of the child. Her actual question was whether she would be the butthole to keep her Phil out of the delivery room. The behavior of the 2 men was so creepy that a bunch of commenters, myself included, were convinced husband and or Phil would try to murder or hurt her. On some twisted logic that husband should raise the child as a single dad like Phil had done. OP never posted an update or responded to comments, and I think she might have deleted the post too. It was hands down one of the most disturbing things I've read on Reddit. I've never been so worried for a total stranger before. I remember she even stated in the post that when she mentioned to her Phil husband she might survive the birth, her Phil brushed it off like no, not happening. He was also saying no epidural and little medical intervention as conditions to her giving birth. It freaked me out. Bruh, does anyone remember that one post I think on R8 where the wife discovered that the husband was keeping several women's driver's licenses and he said that the women gave them to him and the wife automatically jumped to cheating instead of I don't know serial killer vibes? The dude who I think recently had moved in with GF starts noticing his gym socks supply dwindling and dwindling. Don't remember how he discovered it, but apparently girlfriend was stealing them and using them to wipe her butt after taking a crap and then throwing them away. Why? I haven't seen it yet, but the gist of it was this woman's husband came out as gay and in love with another man after she had gotten pregnant. Then the 2 men became very involved in a negative way. The boyfriend wanted say in the baby's name, room, life, etc. Many people in the comments seemed to think that he got her pregnant on purpose so that he and his boyfriend could have baby. Very weird. Very sad if true. It was a long time ago, but this woman found out her husband basically stalked for 3 years. He paid off PPL to date her and dump her to make her confidence go low enough so he can date her. The poor lady said she didn't have money and was solely living in his income. He told her everything when he was super drunk. I was so scared for her. I was scrolling the comments for this one. The creepiest thing is she found out because he convinced his brother to do the same thing and it worked for him too. My personal favorite is about the guy who wanted to help his wife explore her scat fetish. They agree to try having him crap on her, but she breaks the rules and tries to eat straight from the ring. He gets upset and immediately says, how can I go to the zoo with her family tomorrow? My GF and I say to each other all the time that something we do is going to ruin the zoo. Please help us find this post. OMG, I don't know this one, but there's another you gotta see, lem, go find it, lol. This dude's wife became convinced she was pregnant, despite all medical scans saying otherwise. Got real hostile and defensive when people tried to prove her wrong. Turns out she had some sort of severe psychosis after a traumatic miscarriage, and had joined a Facebook group of women who were all suffering from similar delusions. They called it a phantom pregnancy or something like that. It was real sad. The husband thankfully didn't listen to the comments telling him to divorce her crazy butt and managed to get her proper treatment, and last I heard her condition was improving. The cryptic pregnancy groups were wild a few years ago, not on FB to see if they're still active. Seeing the posts from these people, so desperate for children that they believe they're 3 years 2 months pregnant, really broke my heart. There was one recently where a father refused to go to his blind toddler's birthday because he hadn't earned it. Frick that guy. There was a tiff where a guy borrowed his sister-in-law's phone or something and found a naughty video on it. When his wife was out of the house, he put on a VR headset and earbuds and started jerking off to it. His wife came home early and found him. He made a Tifu post about it and people in the thread were encouraging him to try and go for a threesome with his wife and her sister. His wife found his Reddit account, gave away all his gold to people who weren't creeps, and divorced him. I think the same person posted it and off my chest, because I remember seeing something like this. What was the one with the girl who was afraid of offending her boyfriend because every time he cooked dinner it'd make her sick? But not him, he'd be fine. Then later she was looking under the sink and found a jar of slugs. Then Reddit was panicking that the boyfriend was trying to kill her or make her seriously ill. Anyone have a follow up? Yes, someone in this thread posted the link, with the update. There was one I only saw screenshots of, but the gist is OP thought his GF was cheating when she said she was having a girls' night in, so he hides in her closet for several hours to catch her in the act. GF really was just having girlfriends over, and as OP is feeling stupid, he gets caught and has to explain to his GF and all her friends why he's there. GF kicks him out and only contacts him to say when he can come pick up his stuff when her dad and brother will be there as well. OP is asking for advice on how to fix things and proposes showing up earlier to the meeting to smooth things over. Comments tell him that that is a terrible idea, there's no salvaging the relationship, and that he's lucky she's not pushing for a restraining order, so just get his stuff and stop bothering her. You forgot the part where he admits to peeing in bottles in the closet for the near 24 hours he was hiding. I have two. 1. The one where she was pregnant, in her 3rd year of medical school, doing most of the household chores, and her husband was mad that she was studying for a major test instead of making him dinner. 2. The one where this guy knocked up his GF in college, refused any kind of responsibility, signed away his rights the second he was presented with papers, and 10 years later was married to a different woman and had accidentally been sterilized, I can't remember how, and refused to adopt or conceive via sperm donation cause he didn't feel comfortable raising another man's child, remembered the kid he had 10 years ago, calls up his ex and says that he wants the kid now. She says heck no, he says he'll sue, she says good luck and hangs up. Then he's surprised when everyone, including his best friend, calls him and butt for essentially acting like his first kid had been kept in storage this whole time, and for expecting his wife to raise someone else's child when he isn't willing to do the same. OP doesn't take his girlfriend on dates very often because she's an amazing cook. She can recreate recipes, knows exactly what she's tasting and just knows what a recipe is missing to make it perfect. He's surprised that she's been getting upset over the lack of dates going out for dinner. He posts to hate her, gets reamed out, and decides to apologize and propose to his girlfriend. She declines the proposal because of the one-sided relationship, and ARP's surprised and thought things weren't that bad. Bedbug story is a classic. OP was having memory blackouts and waking up with what she thought were needle marks in her legs. She was afraid her BF was drugging her. Someone in the comments told her she had red flags for bedbugs. Turns out, she had a bedbug infestation and an allergy that caused her to severely react to the bites. The other one was a guy asking how to help his girlfriend. She'd basically turned into a robot, but sometimes he'd catch her by herself sobbing in the middle of the night when she thought he was sleeping. He updated some time later that she killed herself. That was a pretty devastating story to hear about. There was this post about a guy whose girlfriend had a private space in the upstairs of their home that he never saw and wasn't allowed to go into by his wife, and recently a weird smell started coming from there and comments started speculating that she's cooking M or other types of drugs kinda like Heisenberg I guess, and they wanted Op to not be Skylar. A guy whose girlfriend had a private space in the upstairs of their home. I just read the post, and it turns out that her private space was actually the whole upstairs area. The guy had literally never been to the second floor of his own home, which makes the whole situation even crazier. I saw one about a woman who was looking through her wardrobe and found her husband's notebook. Each page of it was filled up. On every page was the name of a woman, what she looked like, what their encounter was like, and he would even rate some of the women. These women would range from family members to random people like the cashier from Walmart. A psych made a comment saying this behavior was extremely alarming, and detailed a plan for her to safely confront him about what he was doing. A few days later, she deleted her account, and no one knows why, or what happened afterwards. A Phoenix cop got caught doing this, except it was with underage girls he came across during his job. Creepers. I don't know about Fricked Up, but I will always remember the post about the one guy with a cat girl girlfriend that would pee on his carpet if she was mad at him. Cat girl RP stops being sexy real quick once she whips out peeing on the floor. There was one where a woman's husband bought a really expensive necklace for their 16-year-old neighbor girl. I really wonder how that turned out. It's a bit more lighthearted, but this one sends me every time. The post has long since been deleted, I'm pretty sure, but this chick's boyfriend binged the entirety of The Sopranos over the course of quarantine and got way too into it. Dude was basically just role-playing 24/7. Specifically, he kept using a horrible accent and would constantly make up vaguely Italian-sounding words like calling a shower the drippany, and she could not convince him to quit, not even in public. Diaper sniffing husband 1 is by far the worst. An awful one where the wife was getting suspicious of her husband's actions. Suspecting him to be cheating, she does a bit of digging and it turns out he's addicted to sniffing their child's diapers. Really messed up. Oh my god, that's disgusting. I wish I could find it again, but it was the one about the wife that had a husband that disappeared with sticks of butter into the bathroom. If anyone else knows, I still can't get over it. There were two and I'm pretty sure both were on relationship advice. 1. A girl found out her boyfriend makes a nest out old dirty clothes and sleeps in it at night. She was weirded out and got all offended and said he shouldn't have showed her his nest. 2. A pregnant woman went into her husband's shed, who I guess was a truck driver, and found a huge box of used women's underwear. She immediately thought he was cheating, but it was pretty unanimous in the comments that everyone thought he was a serial killer. She never updated. The one where the guy found out his son was one-eyeing off the family dog and then eventually told the wife, who divorced him and tried to blame it on the husband. Colby 2012. The Iranian yogurt is not the issue often pops into my head in situations where it can be metaphorically applied, but is much too niche to actually say aloud. It was obviously a ruse to get more yogurt space has got to be my favorite line. One where a teenage boy had his mom take money off of him, so he got pee and went to hide in his friend's pool house. I'm assuming both were rich. Anyways, Redditors were all telling him to never talk to his mom again and that he should cut ties. I was in the comments like, hey, go home and talk it out with your mom. She's probably worried about you. Mayo. Then someone said I must be a mom because I was worried about her over the kid. Spoiler alert, I'm not. The girl who caught her boyfriend going into the bathroom with a stick of butter multiple times and it had be gone when he came out. Advice where boyfriend was abusive to girlfriend and GF's child was to cut his nuts off while he was sleeping to lower his testosterone levels. Excuse me, what? Someone said that women need to be shielded from men they are not dating other than family or they will cheat. They also said they should only have female doctors, nurses, dentists, etc. For that same reason, this is fked up. Reddit really is the worst place for relationship advice. I read one once that wasn't up for long. A girl who had been cleaning her husband's things and in the closet found 2 pairs of little boys' underwear. They didn't have kids. There were 2 pairs, each with a piece of paper with a 4-digit number. The commenters thought perhaps they were dates, and she did reply that he had left the house for some reason or another on those dates. The post got deleted. Never got an update. I think about that one often. OMG, I remember that one. I hope OP is safe. Many people were suggesting she do not confront him as it was dangerous. I hope she left and he is nowhere near children. There was one ATA where 2 close friends got accepted to university in different countries. The one got into a better one than the other and it was her dream school. So the other friend who didn't get into the same school hacked into the friend's email and replied no to the acceptance letter just so they could both go to the same school as the one who didn't want to be alone. That time a guy caught his wife cheating on him with the neighbor, asked Reddit for help, and they told him to divorce her. She stabbed the kids and herself. She killed the kids and stabbed herself. Link is further up in the replies. There was one I think on Relationship Advide where a boyfriend and girlfriend moved in together and he started misplacing and forgetting where his things were. He'd think his keys were on the counter but they weren't and she'd find them somewhere totally different saying he was forgetful. It started happening so much he got concerned until his friend pushed him to get cameras and he saw his girlfriend moving his stuff around the apartment. He confronted her. She said nothing and just moved out a couple of days later. So creepy, like she wanted him to think he was losing his mind. That's kinda the plot of the movie Gaslight, where the term gaslighting comes from. They move lamps and things to make the woman think she's crazy. Didn't see it on Reddit, but was the most common thing I ever heard growing up. Date someone that's the complete opposite of you because if you date someone like yourself you'll get bored and fight all the time. Worst and dumbest crap I've ever heard in my entire life. It was deleted quickly after, but I can't forget about the one by a manager who got his employee with Down syndrome pregnant and didn't know how to tell her parents. There was a relationship advice post where a girl with schizophrenia was convinced her boyfriend was waking her up by masturbating but he always, angrily, denied it. He started blaming it on her, up until this point controlled schizophrenia and was pushing her to having her medication dosage increased. She also had a suspicion that she was being drugged because she would wake up groggy and she found an empty pill container. Honestly it could have been her schizophrenia or her boyfriend was a manipulative butthole, but OP never updated. Probably the one where the guy posted it on the fantasy football subreddit by accident, but that was more fricked up in the most hilarious way possible. That's the greatest mess of advice ever Mayo. It's still top post of all time 4 years later. Just now, someone posted a note they found, handwritten by Trevor's grandma Alicia, asking for prayers for him as he was struggling with depression. Someone commented that she should just find him a girlfriend. Fuck off. The best and most effective form of respect is respect that is founded upon fear. Not said in this way of course but literally said that the wife should fear you so that she could respect you. What felt like a useless piece of advice until you actually tried it. Once begun is half done. I am a terrible procrastinator by nature. I have totally done the well now at 5:02 so I have to wait until 6 o'clock to start cleaning and I like making things seem like so much work that I can't possibly do them unless I take time off of work. In reality if you just start a project without thinking about it you can get everything done in like 15 minutes a day and it's never really that bad. This too shall pass. On those days when I just feel like I can't take it I think of that, and I know tomorrow will be different. Someone once told me, tomorrow may not be better, but at least it'll be different in a strange way that too is comforting. How sage. The darkest hour still only has 60 minutes. My therapist told me the next time I'm going to have a panic attack to just give in and tell myself it was okay to have one. I told him he was crazy. After a couple tries it started working to my amazement. I haven't had a panic attack in 3 years. My grandfather told me this and I never understood it until I had my own place. Always buy the cheap tools at first and if you wear it out break it then you use it enough to justify getting a nicer more expensive one. I guess with power tools and stuff, but my grandfather used to say the opposite. I'm not rich enough to buy cheap things. I still have his tools. Think pliers, screwdrivers, files. Keeping my shoulders back. It was a suggestion I saw for preventing panic anxiety. IDK what it is, but when your shoulders are in that position it gives some strange feeling of control. I also read somewhere that during panic attacks the body basically wants to curl into fetal position for protection. So I feel like focusing on keeping your arms down and shoulders back is a conscious way to go against that and stay grounded in reality. Works for me. Could work for you too. That forest app. It grows a tree for up to 2 hours and during that time, you can't access any apps you think will distract you. If you wanna open a distracting app, you'd have to kill your tree. All your trees, dead or alive, appear in a little forest. I have always had trouble motivating myself to focus on homework and not look at Reddit YouTube. but this app is just enough guilt to not open them. I haven't killed anything yet and I'm surprised at how much I can care about a small virtual tree. People told me about it and I just completely assumed that I'd never use it or it wouldn't work for me considering how distractible I am. But it works wonders. Goodbye, Reddit. My dad always told me ask anyway. The worst they can say is no when buying something or when I needed something from another person. Seemed stupid to ask if I was sure they would say no, but I was also a socially anxious kid. Turns out that advice has helped me with school, with raises, with people in general, with plans with new friends. Another thing, a stupid question is better than a stupid mistake. There's what you need, there's what you want, and there's what you can't afford. My dad says this all the time, and I never thought of it as useless. I just never used it. Now I have, and my money is far easier to manage. If you can't buy it twice, you can't afford it, Jay-Z. If you can tell that someone is going to hit you, tilt your head down. Teeth don't grow back, your jaw is lights out. If they punch the top of your skull, they will probably break their hand. Always be drunk. Putting cold water on freshly shaved skin will make it so you don't get ingrown hairs. Some of the best advice I've ever received. Your gums bleed when you floss because you don't floss enough. Turns out if you floss enough, your gums won't be inflamed so they don't bleed when you floss. It's true. Or at least get an electric toothbrush, source, and dental hygienist. For gamers, play games that have a beneficial AFK element in-game. Then whenever you need to do some AFK stuff, spend the time it takes cleaning your house. Started playing Black Desert Online on Xbox. My house has never been cleaner and I'm doing it so regularly that it's becoming a habit, and when I'm all caught up I nap. It's like I tricked myself into taking care of me and my place with games. Easily the best life change I've made this year. I'm productive in game, at home, and I'm well rested. 10/10 highly recommend. I have watched Reddit die. There is nothing of value left on this site. Don't suffer future pain. In other words, worrying about all the stuff that could happen stops you from doing things, and worse, turns potential pain into actual worry and mental pain. Worry is interest paid on a debt you may never have. I can't remember where that's from. Exercising helping with depression and anxiety. It's not a cure-all and I needed to be on meds to get to the point where I could do it, but it really does help me. I've been off my meds now for over a year. Under doctor supervision. Don't stop taking your meds unless you run it by your doctor. And when I can't exercise for a few days, I can feel the depression and anxiety coming back. Now instead of going through a million things I did wrong in my head, I run for 3 miles or lift some heavy crap. If you have a clogged nose, doing 8-10 push-ups will temporarily clear it up. Fans on my old MacBook died. Saw a YouTube video that said to simply take your fist and bang on the part of the computer that housed the fans. Thinking it was a troll, I gave it a shot out of pure frustration, and lo and behold, they purred back to life and I never had another issue with them for the rest of the time that I owned that computer. Back when iPods were all the rage, mine got an error. I googled the error, and the fix was to drop it from about 6 inches. I did so thinking at worst my broken iPod will be more broken, but it started right up. As someone with a phobia of needles my entire life, I finally, 30 years in, had a nurse tell me to ask for a spare alcohol pad and sniff it right as I'm about to get jabbed. She said the harsh smell is enough of a distraction to keep your mind off the needle. I was there for a flu shot, so I got to try it out right away. I wasn't expecting much, but it worked. I've been doing it ever since, and have no trouble with shots or blood draws now, which is huge for someone they've triggered panic attacks and near fainting in before. Bribe yourself with fun things to do the not so fun things. Today I was tired after work but got a little care package in the mail, so I made myself go on the 2.5 mile run I didn't want to do before I could open the package. But now I'm refreshed and happy that I did the thing I was pseudo dreading, and I have a fun care package to open. Life is really much easier if you clean your workplace room. I clean my room often and it makes me feel calm and clears my head. No greater feeling than coming home to a clean bedroom after working late. Not taking your cell phone into bed with you. After a while you will sleep much easier without a distraction and blue light shining straight into your eyes before bed. Sounds like a good idea. Me on my phone in bed at 10 PM. Stick to the same sleep schedule on your days off that you follow on days when you have to be somewhere at a specific time, like school or work days. I spent my whole life sleeping until noon on weekends, thinking I was storing sleep in some imaginary sleep bank. I recently started waking up early on weekends, and now I don't have trouble waking up when my alarm goes off during the week. Plus I have all this extra time to do stuff because I'm not sleeping all day. It's better to lose a second of your life than to lose your life in a second. People on the road need to just slow down a little. It'll save your life. And stay off your goddamn phone. Try killing roaches with soapy water in a spray bottle. It sounds useless, but it works better than any insecticide I've ever tried, and it's non-toxic and really easy to clean up. Give up caffeine to help with anxiety. I gave it up to help with my vertigo years after this was first suggested to me, but it did help. I'm still anxious as frick, but I'm not reacting to it like a hummingbird on sea anymore. I'm just going to keep pretending like this advice is bulls because I don't want to imagine a world without coffee. It's my last vice. I quit smoking 5 years ago and quit drinking 3.5 years ago. I don't want to have to give up caffeine, but I also don't want to be stuck with anxiety forever. If you feel like quitting, then just tell yourself that the story doesn't end this way. Sounds cliche, but you decide when your story ends when you stop trying. You may fail, but you will not fail today. Don't let the story end this way. Imagining my life as a story is what has helped me through some pretty dark days. Ending it all would be a pretty crappy way to end the story. I suffered severe insomnia for years. Someone told me I should get up an hour earlier, go for a 30-minute run in the morning, then do yoga for 15 minutes before showering and getting ready for work. Seemed ridiculous, but I decided to try it for a month. Haven't suffered insomnia since. Have way more energy, sleep better, feel better. It's amazing. Teacher here. When you're texting, emailing between colleagues, friends, etc., don't put anything you wouldn't say to their face in writing. If you have it in writing, they've got something physical they can hold against you or gossip about. Even if the door is closed, speak quietly if you're going to vent. Your co-workers can probably hear you clear down the hallway if you're bitching after hours. Take it down to a whisper. CC your admin on every email asking a professional question to anybody else or in any conversation in which the slightest bit of conflict could arise. If you don't trust one of your co-workers, don't say a word to them beyond basic greetings. Trust your gut. Sit quietly in the lounge at lunch. If you think something is wrong, speak up. You probably aren't the only one to notice, and your voice does make a difference. Talking about conflict with my manager at my last job got me identified as trouble. Everyone else just kept their mouth shut. Clean as you cook, dishes right away, and 10 minutes every day walking through the house picking things up, organizing. So much better than hours of cleaning on one day. Pull up your socks. Literally, when you're feeling flagged and weary and still have 2 hours left before you can go home, sit down, take off your shoes, and literally pull your socks up. I belittled this forever until I tried it. It's actually a nice little pick-me-up. I had a problem looking at people's shoulders while they were speaking instead of their face. I told a co-worker my problem, who said, well, just look at their ears. Nobody can tell the difference. Life-changing. Seriously, no one can tell the difference. My mom told me to spend good money on the things that separate you from the ground. Tires, shoes, mattress. I finally bought good, not cheap shoes, and life was significantly better. They last so much longer and my back and posture improved too. She's not wrong about tires and a mattress either. Work boots. I can't tell you how many people work 40 hours a week in the cheapest work boots from Walmart and complain of hip and back pain. When it comes to smoking cigarettes or weed, it's easy to do it all the time. Easy to never do it. Dang hard to only do it once in a while. I needed to hear this. Thank you, Papa. If you have those annoying, tiny gray balls that get stuck to clothing, use a dry razor to shave it off. Saved so many items of clothing. Shaved. Put on your own oxygen mask first. You can't help anyone effectively if you're not okay yourself. I was always self-sacrificing, to the point of being hospitalized for exhaustion. I'd always been told to give till it hurts and then push through the pain to give more, and so that's what feels natural, and anything else is pure selfishness. A great therapist told me that I'm good at helping, but I have to be at least at a baseline before I'm effective, and, oh, it makes everything so much better. That's good therapist advice. I once had someone tell me, you know, at your funeral, no one is going to be standing around saying if only he was able to give a little more. My doctor told me when I feel anxious or something like that to wiggle my toes and count them for every wiggle. It is something that distracts your mind and you can do it anywhere cause it just means moving your toes. On my wedding day, my grandmother said to me, never do anything around the house that you don't plan on doing for life. At the time I thought it was a terrible advice. When I was mowing the lawn at 2 months pregnant, I got what she meant. Giving small compliments to people right when you think it makes both them and you happy. Think that girl's skirt is cute? Tell her. I've actually made a couple of friends doing this. For those of you all in comments above me wondering how to compliment girls without coming off as creepy, pro tip, super simple solution. Identify what about that skirt is cute, and compliment that specifically. I like that pattern on your skirt. That's a cool color. That way you're complimenting the person's tastes, not their form. Drink less caffeine. I didn't realize how much it affects my mental disorders, anxiety, depression, ADD, until I started drinking less, and realized I function way better when I don't have a soda or two every other day. Dang. I've never heard that. I have a buddy battling depression and he seriously cannot function socially without it. Learning all the scale positions on the fretboard. Felt pointless to learn more than one way to play the same thing. Then 10 years later, I sat down and decided to learn them and it blew my mind. Everything clicked and all of a sudden I had a frame of reference for all the theory I've heard over the last decade. My perspective changed from I have to memorize all this boring stuff and I don't know why I'm doing it instead of just playing. Why do I have to do it the way theory tells me to? To learning these things isn't meant as a punishment. It's just the standard most people have agreed upon to communicate about musical ideas. It's like everyone agreeing to use the alphabet and grammar in order to facilitate communication. If you have body image issues, find one even very small thing you like about yourself. My starting point was a freckle in the middle of my left hand. Whenever you're feeling bad about yourself, remember you like that one thing. Find a new small thing to like about once a month if you can. It becomes easier to find things, and eventually easier to like yourself, in my experience. Thanks for that advice, Mom. In regards to dating, you'll find someone when you're not looking. Sounds like total BS, but it's proven true for me a few times. Should probably add that you need to be interacting with people in general for this to work. Extreme introverts shouldn't use this as an excuse not to go outside. Changing something about your appearance to gain confidence, self-esteem, getting a haircut, going to the gym. I thought it was a cop-out piece of advice and then I got a haircut and I felt so comfortable in my skin and at peace that I remember the exact moment it happened. When the processing time on my husband's permanent resident status went way overdue, I was freaking out that they would make it our fault his green card and status were no longer valid. That and his driver's license expired and they wouldn't renew it because of his out-of-date papers. Getting immigration to tell you anything helpful is a crap show and our only office in the state is open 4 days a month and wouldn't do crap, and it is wildly impossible to get an unscheduled appointment at the Denver office. My grandmother told me to contact my senator and make them deal with it. I thought she was just a dingus, but I was desperate, so I did. I just filled out a form for both of us stating we give them the right to discuss our private case and their office harass the ever-loving crap out of us and lit up our state. They would call me just to see how I was doing. They got crap done and I think they pushed his case to the front. They really came through. He's applying for citizenship now and the processing time was almost 2 years when we submitted the application in February and we already have an appointment for the final interview and test in the next 2 weeks. I am positive there is a flag or something on his case account now that they did that for us because everything else had been slower than molasses in winter. Freaking bless you, Pam. You are a badass. Trying to lose weight. When going somewhere in your car, try and park as far from your destination as you can, when you can. I read this tip somewhere else when I was at my heaviest and really trying to lose. Every morning instead of taking the first spot available at work, I'd take the farthest one back. I had to trek a bit to just get to the door, then through the office and upstairs to my cube. It felt good whenever I did it, and it put me in this mode where I wanted to do other healthier things throughout the day. I went from 385 plus to 220 in about a year and a half after I started adapting those baby steps, among many other baby steps, of course. I got one of those keloid scars on one of my ear piercings. A really big, hard bump on the back of my ear. I heard that tea tree oil would make it go away but it seemed so outlandish that oil would do anything. I assumed it was MLM essential oil nonsense. Went to the dermatologist. Had it cut off. It grew back in a few weeks. Got it cut off again. Grew back again. Dermatologist then does a cortisol injection. It went away for about a year then reappeared one day. Tried putting tea tree oil on it every morning. Gone in 2 weeks. Whole thing basically peeled off in layers, which was disgusting but very satisfying. My mom was not thrilled about having paid for all of those appointments when the TTO was $10. Super cheap basic aspirin crushed up with a few drops of water to form a paste applied to the keloid allowed to dry then washed off also works wonders. It also doesn't smell as bad as the tea tree oil if you're on that crap stinks end of the spectrum. If it takes less than 5 minutes, do it immediately. I do so much less housework on weekends because of this. The fact that it takes less than 5 minutes is what makes me spend a lot more than 5 minutes on it. What advice your parents gave you turned out to be complete bulls. Don't take that scholarship. It's only to help the poor, yes mum, but we're only borderline middle class and that scholarship would have meant I didn't have to work every weekend in uni. Real advice is, if people are handing you money, take it. Computers will never catch on. Don't waste any more of your time on them. Wasted a decade doing random temping jobs before finally working with computers. Now they harass me all the time to fix their devices. Rule 1 of IT. Never let anyone know you are IT. You can't just apply online. Get dressed up, go to Lockheed Martin, introduce yourself, and ask if they have any available positions. I didn't do it for the record. They were just so adamant about it. My parents, they just did not understand how many places these days only do applications online and showing up isn't going to do anything. If you study for the final year of high school, you'll never have to study for the rest of your life. I think this is very India specific advice. Oh, boy were they wrong. They say that before every exam. Just get good grades in this one. The rest is all a cakewalk. My mom once told me that men never had to apologize and that saying sorry was the woman's job. I knew instantly how bulls it was and it made me wonder what kind of freaking Stockholm syndrome my father gave my mom. Love means never having to say I'm sorry is absolute bulls. They're only mean to you because they like you, they're jealous. That's a great way to encourage people into crappy, abusive relationships. Also, they are mean because I'm a freaking loser with no social skills. My mom saying that actually encouraged me to be mean to a girl I had a crush on. It ended up with a trip to the principal's office because she got sick of my BS and reported every mean thing I said. Work doing what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I do love what I do but it's still freaking hard work. I'm in the craft beer industry. I don't drink anymore. You'll be empty and sad if you cut one of your parents out of your life. When I went away to college, I felt a gaping emptiness. That emptiness was family, and you'll feel it too. Wrong on all counts, mom, and good riddance. Anything about dating a girls, although I always knew it was bulls. My dad hates women, along with people of color, but that's another story, and my mom thinks all women are stupid, weak, and materialistic. I was getting my girlfriend a whiteboard because she liked to doodle and it would be a cute gift. My parents flipped crap, telling me that was the dumbest gift ever and that she would break up with me, so I got her a candle instead. She would later tell me a whiteboard was a fine gift and I later got her one that we both enjoyed. We dated for 5 years and my mom kept hammering into me that my GF was gonna cheat on me all because I haven't bought her jewelry yet. From then on, I kept my dating life private from my pathetic family. They're teasing you because they like you. Very wrong. They bullied me because I was small and didn't fight back. It stopped when I finally snapped and threw one of them down a flight of stairs. My dad, a teamster, warned me not to use my GI Bill on college. Instead, I should go out and get a good union job where I'll have a pension. Otherwise, any job I ever have, they could just fire me for no reason. Thankfully, I ignored him and got my bachelor's in electrical engineering. I've been working steadily now for about 20 years and have a very large amount saved for retirement. Music can only be your hobby. You should get a real job. Started making money only with music since 17 yo. Never worked a day anywhere else and made a great career out of it. Kudos to you. Many of us struggle and fail, and it's not for a lack of trying. You just have to go talk to the manager. No, they'll tell me to apply online and probably think I'm stupid for not knowing to apply online, because literally every job expects you to apply online. I guarantee you if I went in there and asked to speak with the manager I'd get hired. You just have to show initiative. You have 30 years of industry experience at a well-known firm at the management level. Initiative is not the reason you're getting hired. It's because I have 6 months of experience and you have 30 years. I guarantee you if I emailed the director of HR, I would get hired. Yes, because you're a senior employee, not a 22-year-old begging for a job. You'll get a job, you just need to want it and work harder. Maybe actually go out and look for a job instead of sitting on the internet all day. Holy crap, shut the frick up. I've been mindlessly filling applications for 6 straight hours and I've been doing this for weeks and I've gotten 3 replies and they were all telling me I didn't get the job. There were 3 billion less people on earth when you got a job and the internet barely existed and people had more money to hire because that was before your generation decided to frick the economy and make healthcare, housing, and education insanely expensive. Rant over. I have a job that I love now, but holy crap that was annoying. Don't play a brass instrument because it's for boys. Don't display your intelligence because boys find that intimidating. My mom always criticized little things I would do and say you're never going to get a boyfriend if you do it that way. Turns out that those little things were the reason my boyfriend asked me out. Good thing I'm stubborn and didn't listen to her. I would also like to mention that I came out as a B to my parents a year before me and my boyfriend got together. She still continued to say boyfriend even though I literally had to explain to her at least a million times that I have more options. So yeah, she's also a little salty about that, but at least my dad is chill with it. Don't ever hit back. Tell a teacher. Frick that. I was bullied relentlessly for years from about 4th grade until 8th grade. Just taking it mostly verbal, but some pushing, shoving, and people sweeping my legs out etc. Util one day, in gym class one of the worst ones shoved me into a wall and it cracked a tooth. I finally had enough and I punched him in the face so hard I broke his nose. While he was down, I kicked him in balls and in the head multiple times. Blood everywhere. I got suspended for 5 days. Totally worth it. No one ever bullied me after that. It was just that simple. University will be the best time of your life. Heck freaking no. Being isolated away from your support networks and friends while having severe mental issues is not fun. University is a breeding ground for stress and burnout, anxiety and depression. It's the first time many of us have lived away from home and we haven't got a clue how to take care of ourselves. Sure, there are fun parts, but it's freaking hard too. University was my first time away from home. It was 24 hours after burying my best friend that I began my freshman year. She was killed by a drunk driver a week before term started. Over the next 3 years, I lost my closest university friend to an OD, another to a suicide, and another to a car accident. It was definitely not the best time of my life. If you fight back, you're just playing their game. Just get a teacher. Turns out some people in authority positions just suck as people. Others actively abuse their power. Resisting, with verbal, physical, or legal force, is sometimes the only answer. Took me a long time to appreciate that. Basically what my mom told me. My dad, on the other hand, told me if they come at you, fight back. Don't let them push you around. That was good advice. You can feed a family on minimum wage. Haha, only if you're getting financial aid and food donations from a church. My family had built our lifestyle around being super poor. Glad I broke that cycle. Congrats on breaking the cycle, man. It's hard to break generational poverty. Also, we really need to raise the minimum wage. My dad told me that you had to drink water and couldn't drink anything else like soda or Kool-Aid or whatever because your body wouldn't recognize it and you'd die of dehydration. Dad sounds like a hydro homie. Mum told me the pill wasn't effective if I drank alcohol. This was her way to stop me drinking underage. It worked. I choose underage freaking instead. Only found out this was a lie in my 20s. I was shocked. I confronted her about it. She laughed and was proud it worked for so long. I was put on the pill at a young age by my gynecologist due to a medical condition. Your liver thanks you, but I hate liars. Study what you find interesting and a career will follow. Waste of 4 years and a shitload of money. Mostly scholarship money, some of my parents' money, a tiny bit of my own money. I have a history degree and work at a history museum as a part-time parking attendant. They told me during the interview that I got called back because of my degree. It took having a history degree just to interview for a parking attendant job. To ignore bullies. That's the worst kind of advice one could give to kids. Bullies don't want attention. They want to cause damage. Trying to ignore them only give them more power. They feel like they can do whatever they want without any repercussion. In my case, as shy female, the only thing that stopped my males, always males, bullies was me punching them in the face. Then their poorly developed brain realized I want the easy prey they believed I was and stopped bullying me. I'm not proud of this, but I had to defend myself, since family and teachers weren't unable to help me in the best case, or brushed off the situation as unimportant in the worst. This works for adults too. Submissive people get used and abused. Teaching a young kid that they won't receive any help when they're threatened, to lower their head and pretending nothing is happening, will turn them into weak adults. Teach kids how to defend themselves. Damn it. You're absolutely right. Bullies aren't looking for a challenge. They aren't trying to improve their bullying game. They're looking for an easy target, and if you stop being that, they'll move on to other fights they know they can win. Don't buy that old VW Beetle. I love that thing. It gave me a hobby, a sense of freedom, smiles from random strangers, and a huge international social circle. Shave your beard before interviewing for a job. I have never been hired after interviewing with a naked face. I have never failed to be hired after interviewing with a beard. 2008 through 2011 would have been a great deal easier if I hadn't followed their advice. I hate to be the one to tell you, man, but I am pretty sure this has a lot more to do with the times than the facial hair. When I was a young boy first trying to figure out how to holler at the ladies, my dad, who is Mexican for context, told me that the best way to get a girl's attention was to work your way close, and in her ear whisper the phrase coochie coochie. Sounded simple enough. Did not have the intended outcome. My dad thought it was hilarious. Great way to troll your kid. It takes two hands to clap. A Confucian Chinese proverb which apparently means that if you disrupt the social order by being a victim, you probably did something to deserve it. Heard this one countless times growing up and it was always bulls. My mum told me one day I'd meet the perfect man and he'd dump me for having poor table manners. I met the perfect man and he got egg stuck in his beard on our first date. 2.5 years later we're expecting a baby. I grew up in one of those batshit crazy organic vegan non-GMO households. My mother used to always say that GMOs are actually government controlled molecular robots that are used to control us. She used to also say that all gays have AIDS. Frick you, mom. I am now an extremely gay bio student working with molecular robots that can save lives. Well, obviously GMO stands for Government Molecular Oversight. I had an ex's parents tell her that she wouldn't be able to get a job if she ever went to a psychologist or anything alike, that it would end up on some sort of list or permanent record which a job interviewer has access, which added on to the issues she already had. Poor girl wouldn't dare reach out for help to anyone. Her parents did something they didn't want anyone knowing about. Pretty much all of it. If I listened to them, I'd be a divorced community college dropout with 3 kids working a job I hate in a town that's dying, and catering to their every whim. I'm a married, child-free engineer in a mid-sized city with absolutely no contact with my parents. Now I just have to deal with the PTSD that is my life gift from them. It doesn't matter what you major in. Just get a degree and you'll get a job easily. I graduated in the middle of the recession. Don't worry about having a plan financially. Everything will work out. Maybe I should specify that this particular comment came from a conversation about why I don't feel comfortable having kids just yet. Just pay the minimum on your credit card every month. That's all you have to do. Yeah, thanks mom. Took me years to dig out of debt. When working at a crappy warehouse job unloading 60-pound boxes from trucks all day, I hurt myself unloading one day and my parents kept telling me it doesn't matter, just keep working. Stay at that job, it only matters that you work, not what you do. I hated my life for years. I didn't know why. I was just never happy, unfulfilled, felt no life purpose. I was treated like crap for being white by openly xenophobic bosses, and harassed at work all day every day. Then one day I found my passion, building websites. I got an internship at an advertising agency, and 3 months later I was hired with less hours and making less money, but I felt amazing. I went from dreading sleeping at night because I knew I had to work the next day to literally thinking about work non-stop because I was so excited. It's been 2.5 years since then and I'm honestly an entirely different person now. I'm happy. I look forward to every day and even get a bit sad when I can't make it into work. I feel like my life matters, and that I'm doing something I'm proud of. I've been on cloud 9 ever since I got out of that horrible crappy job. This is actually a quality of younger generations that older ones don't seem to understand. People are actively choosing, if they have the opportunity, to work doing things they like, or at places they like, despite it meaning less pay, because the quality of life goes up so much when you don't hate your job self. If you go up to a table full of girls and say, "Hi, I'm new in town and I was looking for someone to show me around," this has a higher chance of failure than success. Let's just say, you have to go to college to be successful. Less attractive girls have better personalities. You have to have kids. Less attractive girls have better personalities. My sister intentionally dated ugly guys because she believed that they all cheated on her and abused her. Now she's with a guy who could be an underwear model and she's happier than ever. Don't engage in fellatio. It brings demons into your house. Yes, my mom actually said this to me right before I got married and was a virgin. I told her anything my husband and I did in the marital bed was between us and God. Never give up. It's inspirational and crap, but not the right thing to tell a kid. I was so stressed during school because I thought I couldn't let them down. It took me a long time to understand that it's okay to give up. That's called toxic positivity. Being positive to the point, all nuance, situational awareness, and care for others' feelings or perspectives is lost. Never give up. Just be happy. Think positively. Everything will work out. Everything happens for a reason. Spend 1/4, save 3/4. My paycheck is $8 an hour. The determined minimum wage in America is $7.50. Who in their right mind would think I would be able to live with a savings mentality where my paycheck to spend freely, food and crap, would basically be $2 an hour? Yeah, maybe if you make 6 figures and live alone that could work. Just be yourself, and people will like you. Not when you have Asperger's and you never shut up. People will be kind to you if you're kind to them. BS. My dad told me never to take time for myself to have fun, told me I needed to spend my whole life working and that's all that mattered. Also told me after my mom died that me being sad doesn't matter because that's life and nobody cares. Toughen up. I have a bunch. If I go to sleep with wet hair I will get sick. I cannot eat banana and drink milk together in the morning. If I sleep late, my hair will turn white. I cannot whistle at nights because it attracts ghosts. The list goes on. You don't want to do martial arts. That's for boys. You'll get hurt. Currently almost 40 and about to test for my second dan in Taekwondo. I regularly get gold in tournament sparring. Don't go camping. Some rapist will kidnap you out of your tent. Camping and hiking is one of the most enjoyable family activities we do together. The plethora of hiking camping opportunities is one of the many reasons we plan to move to New Zealand. The first I remember registering as bulls was when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade. I can't remember how the topic came up, but I remember making some statement about not lying to my kids one day and my father said, if you're the parent, you can tell them anything you want. It's not like they are there to see what really happened. My father's lived a lot of this, but has completely discounted the notion that other people witness stuff and can corroborate or disprove a story. A big later one was, student loans are good debt. You'll get your degree, get a good job, and pay it off in no time. I think I'm 10 years into payments and am down $6k from when the interest peaked, and $10k over what I originally took out. I should just try to get that first job I interviewed for. I would have been miserable there. Like, get out in 3 months miserable. I remind myself that there is a filter that Reddit puts on reality, as does any medium, as does your parents' rose-colored memories and advice derived that memory. This isn't a binary world, and people's experiences, whether exaggerated, made up, or completely accurate, does not mean I should draw definite conclusions from what I read in this thread. Because some parents said to go to college and their children would be guaranteed a big income, and that didn't happen, that does not mean that college is in fact a waste of money every time. That might not even be true most of the time. There are so many variables, such as how that time in school was spent, internships, working, volunteering, networking, and what type of major was pursued. It certainly is believable that people could have done everything right and still fell short of what their parents said, but that isn't a set in stone rule. Also, I always hear about how one adult could work 20 hours at a factory and that was enough to own 2 houses, 4 cars, yearly vacations, while supporting a spouse and 15 kids. But the fact that other people might have been in a better situation doesn't mean I should skip college. As a rule, it just means that if I am taking advice from a parent I should keep that context in mind. Yes, baby boomers can have bad advice. Taking Reddit as truth can be even worse. What sounded like a good piece of advice until you actually tried it? Company loyalty will pay off in the end. You just need to work hard. Reality, you need good interview skills for promotions and to be willing to change jobs if you're not getting what you want from your current one. The best time to look for a new job is when you don't need one. I was told that it was okay to insert a copper penny into a screw-in fuse box as a temporary solution until replacement fuses could be obtained. That was a terrible mistake. If I hadn't smelled overheating wires in the wall it would have burned the house down. Anything is a fuse if you believe in yourself. If you don't know what to take at university, just take whatever interests you. That's a lot of time and money I am never getting back. Good advice for electives. You're more likely to get good grades on something that interests you. Get the gen eds covered as a priority, though. My fault for inexperience I guess, but taking things slow when talking to a girl you like. Being upfront and honest is much better. Hey girl, I gotta be upfront and honest. You got a nice butt and I'd like to screw your brains out. Ha, I'll have to give it a try I guess. When I was 16 10 years ago, my parents told me to go into everywhere I wanted to get a job, ask for the manager, shake their hand and hand them my resume while introducing myself. 9 places out of 10 told me to apply online. Don't talk to strangers is good advice when you're a kid. It's terrible when you're an adult because now you have no idea how to network with others. You can talk to me about anything. Spoiler alert. No, they can't most of the time. Not their fault per se, but it gets real annoying when people insist I can talk to about any problems I face, then they get defensive when I point out something they don't like. Oh, I am so glad because this has been weighing me down. I am so in love with your 12-year-old. Now, our state allows for marriage at 13 if the parents approve. So I'm hoping that you can talk to your wife and we can get us moving by their next birthday. Go to stores and hand out resumes. Made a day of it. Not a single place I went to took my resume. They all asked that I applied online. When I looked online, none of them had a place where a resume could be submitted. For entry-level stuff and retail, they really don't need a resume. The application is all they really need from you. Live like every day was your last. Great, there goes my savings account. And my son is getting freaked out by my daily farewell speech. Cries on the side of the road. I don't wanna die. I'm so young. It's better to whole but one thing than to half but two things. One of the lessons I'm trying to teach myself is the value of half a job done. I don't do things that need to be done because I was always taught you dang well do it right the first time. If you sweep the floor, it better be completely and totally spotless when you're done. For example. So if I don't have the energy to get into every nook and cranny, I don't sweep. And then my floor gets way grosser than if I'd just done it and done a crappy job. Perfect is the enemy of good. Don't buy a house with fewer than 3 bedrooms. Well, if I didn't, I wouldn't have been able to buy a house at all. One dumbass gets advice from another dumbass. Buddy told me to put the lid on the grill while the lighter fluid was soaking in the coals. When I lit the grill, the fireball burned all the hair on my face and half the hair on my arm off. There are women who pay good money for that service. You should be thankful. Not me, but advice I gave to a friend. Apparently my delivery of said advice did not convey the absolute sarcasm I had intended. He had taken and failed his driving test numerous times. While lamenting his latest failing grade, I tell him next time he should lock the doors and tell the instructor they aren't leaving until he gets a passing grade. In a couple weeks, when he was able to retake it again, he came into lunch saying they had banned him from taking the test for a month after he actually tried it. This is my favorite. XD. I've always thought that do what you love and you'll never work day in your life shtick was balls. It's like setting your favorite song as your alarm. It doesn't make waking up nicer, just makes you hate the song. Go do something you can tolerate, that pays you well enough, and if you're extra lucky leaves you feeling satisfied. I set a song I loved as my ringtone, but I was working a job where any calls I got were a bad thing. So now I don't like the song and it gives me a small buzz of anxiety when I hear it. Some kid in year 5 told me that if you put your head underwater and breathe in with your nose heavily, then your voice will go squeaky like you've just inhaled helium. It didn't work and I almost died. Another person in year 1 said when I asked them how they got their hair curly, said that they got a comb and twisted it round. I tried this and it got stuck. Very stuck. I ended up cutting my hair off and had to get very short hair to hide the fact that I got a massive patch of short hair. I didn't even know it was possible to force your body to inhale underwater. Don't go to bed angry. If I listened to this, I would never go to bed some nights. Sometimes fights just happen because people are tired and irritable. Sleep on it, you'll often forget what you were so angry about last night. If you love them, let them go. If they come back to you, they are yours. This made me normalize toxic relationships where I keep letting abusive people back into my life. Also, theoretically, if you love something or someone, why the heck would you let it go? You keep them safe, you make them happy. Frick letting go. When it came down to bees and wasps, don't bother it and it won't bother you. Goes to feed and water dog outside. Get stung multiple times by wasp. Bees, maybe, but what they consider bothering them might be different to what you think it is. Wasps? Frick no. They will sting you in passing simply because it seemed like a fun thing to do. Don't worry about what other people think. Just be yourself. This is stupid because not only is it telling you to ignore constructive criticism, it's just plain wrong. Like if everyone says you're an butthole, you're probably an butthole and you should work towards changing that. Don't just ignore them. Also, be yourself has got to be the most meaningless tautology ever said. Everyone is themselves and everyone imitates some part of everyone else. We live in a society, damn it. Just move on. I had to confront him. Glad I did. It wasn't a picturesque moment. He would have left me disappointed had I been hoping for decency. I only went there to look him in the eye to make sure this old man could see that I wasn't the little kid he had been abusing for all these years anymore. That I knew who he was and wanted him to leave me alone. Long story short, he denied pretty much everything. He even started to rewrite the cornerstones of our sordid history and ended up pulling a knife out on me when I called him on it. Anyway, I called the police. He denied pulling a knife out at first and then ended up telling them he did, but it was because I had threatened his life, which I didn't. Luckily the police managed to obtain the CCTV like I had asked them to and had seen that I had put my hands up and presented my torso for him to stab. I needed to call his bluff. I was 80% sure he wasn't going to do anything with the bleed, but I just had to know how far he was prepared to go. For a second beforehand, but what really felt like ages, I had considered taking his head off cleanly with one right hook, but I remembered he might actually die and I would have spent the rest of my good days left in prison. So I did the opposite. He didn't stab me. He was posturing and thought he could shoo me away in a fit of rage like he did in the old days, only with a blade this time. We'll see if it ends up going to court. At least I have a record of him harassing me now. Would I do it again? Yes, but I'm invested by blood. I needed to know how the story ends. Would I recommend it for someone else? Not unless you really have all your bases covered, and even then there's a razor thin margin of error in dealing with your abusers. There are better ways to move on, especially if you're not related. TLDR, I pity you, Dad. Yeah, it'd be nice if you could just drop horribly painful situations that happen to you like a piece of trash, but it doesn't work that way. If you are bullied, tell it to a teacher, parent, or say something mean back. Nah, you gotta knock them the frick out. Just talk to your supervisor about their behavior, and they use that discussion to become even more toxic, and even when you admit you don't think you can bring their problems up with them, and they say that's not okay and that they'll work on it, they become even more toxic. I love workplaces that insist you talk to the supervisor first when said supervisor is the problem in the first place. Never go to bed angry. Sometimes, what you're fighting about is dumb and not worth the time and energy to hash it out. Sometimes, you just need to go to sleep and wake up in a better mood tomorrow. A friend of mine said the best relationship advice she ever got was don't have any serious conversations with your spouse after 10 p.m. I think it's excellent advice. It's worked well for my friend and her husband. Apple cider vinegar bath for sunburn. The internet was really convincing. It all started when I fell asleep in the sun. Soon after, I looked similar to my poorly executed 3rd grade devil costume. My mom attempted to paint my body red with acrylic paint. Except this time, the long streaky patches were from sweat and poorly applied expired sunblock instead of tears. Anyhow, the apple cider vinegar bath smelled real bad, so I put some peppermint oil in it. Well, the combination felt like an icy hot acidic surprise. For hours. Let me tell you, my lady bits have never felt more of a tang, and not in a minty fresh kinda way. Ginger here. Ocean potion ice is what you want. Far better than regular aloe. When I was driving up to a local skiing range with my friends and his parents, couple hours away, I get carsick on the way up and I asked my friend where I should throw up. He thought I was joking and said out the window. In the next few seconds I unroll the window and throw up out of it. It got all over our car and the one behind us. My friend's dad didn't really care too much, he thought it was mostly funny. Better on the car than in the car. Take the high road. Great advice for many situations but awful for others. Sometimes you need to set boundaries and speak your mind. Sometimes petty wins. You have to gauge what works for what situation. Just ask them out. The worst thing they can say is no. Actually, the worst thing they could say is I don't really find you attractive at all. I think we should stop being friends. On one hand, bullet dodge, but on the other, she was fun to hang out with. I mean, personally I would rather take that than be constantly around her while liking her a lot yet not being together. Saves you a lot of stress, bad feelings in the long run. If you put out positive energy, the universe will reward you. Take these clay pills. Antacids are bad for you. Don't use microwaves. They'll give you cancer. Smoking a cigarette. not showing when something is bothering me. People can't tell when I'm upset with something they're doing, and they continue to do it until eventually I explode and yell at them. I was always told not to show when something bothers me, and it's kind of made me into a horrible person. Just be yourself. Sometimes who you are is crap. You should be thinking to change the negative parts of your personality. Be the better person and don't answer back. If you do this, revenge will be the only thing in your mind. I was bullied and I just kept my mouth shut. Worst thing, I don't answer back. It's a self-defense mechanism. All my goals are about revenge because of this. I'm too timid. I've been a pushover. I hate it. I hate my life. My wife read a book about money management. In this book, it said that instead of carrying credit card debt and having money in a savings account not making money, take the savings and pay off the credit cards, which will lower how much you pay in interest costs. Makes sense. Unfortunately, right after that, we had water flood our living room and very little savings to fall back on. Whoops. Though in theory you should have had some free credit space to work with instead. If your dog is experiencing stomach or digestion distress, feed him canned pumpkin. Not even Stanley Steamer could fix our carpet. LOL, been there. Usually that's for constipation and use only like a tablespoon. My mom was always the type to tell me to play hard to get with men. Guess what? Not only does that not work, but it's exhausting and ruins your chances at dating potentially good guys. Only took me once to realize that advice is lame as crap. I had a principal who came in to observe me in my classroom of special needs kids. My kids were educable, so some had lower IQs but not to the level where they were just trainables. I had one girl with cerebral palsy, 2 with learning disabilities, and 2 that had Down syndrome, one of whom was also deaf. Principal was a former kindergarten teacher, and she decided that the best way for me to maintain order at my kidney table was to make mention to everyone how a particular child was doing a particular thing, and then all the other kids would want to imitate that child and order would be restored. I tried to explain to her the way I ran my classroom and that might work with her kindergartners, but my students were being taught different ways of following directions. She would not hear any of it and insisted I needed to follow her advice. So, I resigned myself to trying her method. So when some of the kids wouldn't settle down one day, I made mention of the fact that I really liked the way Michael was sitting. Michael continued to sit very nicely at the table while some of the other kids played around. I repeated myself, saying how we should all notice how nicely Michael was sitting, and got the same result. One of my very serious little boys with learning disabilities raised his hand and pointedly asked, "But Miss Wilson, didn't you tell us to mind our own business and not worry about what other people were doing?" Do what you want and you will never work a day in your life. Technically correct, but probably not what you want. Better advice is to do what you are relatively good at, can do without getting bored, and which is actually in demand. There was a life hack posted a while back that said rocking back and forth on the toilet makes it easier to crap. So here I am, rocking back and forth, swinging a jockey halfway out of my butt, feeling like an absolute insane person. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.